Well, good morning, everybody. And it's kind of exciting that this is our 16th year. Is there anybody in here who's been here for all 16? Anybody? There's somebody over there. All right, yes. Ilia Delio. She's a Franciscan sister, a New Jersey-born American theologian. She works at the intersection of theology, spirituality, and science, with interests in evolution, physics, and neuroscience. She holds the Josephine Connolly Endowed Chair in Theology at Villanova University, where she works in constructive systematic theology, utilizing an interdisciplinary lens. Delio has her MS degree in biology and her MA degree in theology. She holds a doctorate in pharmacology from Rutgers and a doctorate in historical theology from Fordham. As a scientist, she spent years of research in the area of neurotoxicology. As a Christian theologian, she has spent decades probing a spiritually potent creation in which Christ is, quote, not an intrusion into an otherwise evolutionary universe, but its reason and its goal. A student of the esteemed Ewart cousins, Ilia Delio finds inspiration for her work in the 20th century Jesuit paleontologist and theologian, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. Teilhard's notion of an evolutionary Christianity is something that Delio builds upon. Like Teilhard, she urges recognition of the vast interconnectedness of humans and other earth creatures, God and the universe. And she regards the evolutionary process as being determined not by the survival of the fittest, but by the graced capacity of living beings to converge and to unify. Ilia Delio is the author of 15 books and scores of journal articles. Her recent titles include the 2014 Orbis publication, From Teilhard to Omega, Co-Creating an Unfinished Universe, and her 2013 book, The Unbearable Wholeness of Being, Evolution and the Power of Love, was awarded the Silver Nautilus Book Award and recognized by the Catholic Press Association. As a scholar, as a teacher, as a contemplative, Delio consistently witnesses to God speaking the depths of the divine heart in the rich diversity of creation. Please join me in welcoming Ilia Delio.
Thank you for that very kind introduction. And thank you for coming on a Saturday morning on a beautiful sunny day in Boston. It's not snowing here, and I can understand why you want to get out. And thank you for this opportunity to give the Underhill Lecture. I have been working at the intersection of theology, philosophy, spirituality, and culture. Yes, I bring them all together. Because, you know, we are living in conflictual times. And part of my work is trying to understand how can we move beyond, you might say, the walls of conflict into a new breath of life. Last year, Pope Francis issued a wonderfully comprehensive encyclical called Laudato Si, and there has been much discussion on this encyclical. But the subtitle of this work is On Care for Our Common Home. Our common home. And Pope Francis looks around at the world and, for one, begins this encyclical unusually on the experience of a global warmed Earth. In other words, the Earth, global warming continues to proliferate. It is stripping the world of natural resources. It is causing glaciers to melt and polar bears to migrate. The poor are being affected disproportionately. And he asks us to wake up to a new consciousness of interconnectedness. In his view, option for the poor is option for the earth. And so he's challenging us to think of the earth as our home. And while on one hand we can say, oh, that is wonderful, you know, certainly it is our home, I wonder, where is our true home? And that I take that not just as an earth question, I take that as a religious question. Because I think part of our challenge still is that we live with sort of a bifurcated mind, a religious mind that says my true home is there in heaven. And here I am as a pilgrim and stranger on this earth passing through. And I think part of that consciousness, which I do see changing, you know, slowly, is that we still, in some ways, have a theology that's deeply tied to a medieval cosmology. Raymond Panikkar, I think, said it best in his Rhythm of Being, where he said, cosmology and theology are deeply intertwined. That there is no cosmology without theology, and no theology without cosmology. So instead of asking, what's your theology, I could ask you, what's your cosmology? And I'll know who your God is. You know, in the medieval cosmos, of course, it was beautifully static and fixed and earth-centered, and we were at the center of that earth, and God indeed as creator. That cosmology of existence, you might say, became ontologized in the late, I would say, the high Middle Ages, where we began, I mean, in some ways, it's a distortion of the Pseudo-Dionysius, but we won't go there, because it was a Franciscan, actually, who could be, anyway, who was responsible there. But we have this idea of essence and existence, right? In fact, this summer, I was just telling Tom Groom, what am I doing in the month of July? I'm reading Thomas Aquinas and the Islamic philosophers. Thomas was very influenced by the Islamic philosopher, especially Avicenna. And it's Avicenna, and not really Aristotle per se, where we get the distinction between essence and existence. God as pure essence, who bestows, you know, being to being, and we have existence. But that kind of cosmology and theology means, you might say, that, you know, gave rise to that idea of the ladder of ascent. We make our way from earth to heaven. And so, you know, Thomas's beautiful theology, and here I would say Thomas was a genius. He probably would have been a mathematician or a physicist were he alive today. But it is a very Catholic worldview, when, in Thomas's view, and as the whole of theology fits his cosmology. In other words, God is creator, and we, you know, might say, are created, and we participate in that act of creation. But when it comes to the question of a true home, that's, in a sense, still how we think about things. You know, again, even the Hebrew conception of the universe, God, earth, underworld, or what we call the wedding cake cosmos, you know, the three-tiered cosmos. And now, I know this is not you, you're a very enlightened group, but, you know, there is still this kind of operative image of God as the benevolent grandfather, you know, the one who is watching over all from a distance. This, of course, was challenged in the 16th century when Nicholas Copernicus and others began to measure, you might say, the best they could, the rotation of the planets. And, you know, poor Nick, he was a Polish Catholic, and that didn't go well because he said, you know, I don't think we're the center here. I think we're moving. And I think the sun is the center. And he said, no, this can't be. So, you know, he kind of buried his results under his pillow. And Tycho Brahe, Johannes Kepler, and others said, no, Nick, you're right. We are moving. And that, I think, is the beginning of our troubles. Now, Cardinal Bellarmine was not happy about this. He had many good things, but not happy about this. And Galileo, with the more powerful telescope, who confirmed the Copernican heliocentric cosmos, said, indeed, we are moving with other planets around the sun. Bellarmine said, no, the doctrine attributed to Copernicus, that the Earth moves around the sun and the sun stands at the center of the world without moving, is contrary to Holy Scriptures and therefore cannot be defended or held. And we have had, you might say, a long journey since then to try to accept modern science. In some ways, we are, in a sense, here, in some ways, because the shift is slow and it's variable. We are not facing the east here, but I mean, we could be, but the fact is we still now have this kind of conflictual relationship between science and religion, and we're not quite sure how they might fit together. I think Descartes, in a sense, being the true Catholic that he was trying to, in a sense, confirm the Thomistic world by, in a sense, separating out the mental from the physical. On one hand, I have a clear and distinct idea of myself because I am a thinking, non-extended thing. And on the other, I have a clear, distinct idea of a body, in fact, as an extended, non-thinking thing. And it is certain I am really distinct from my body and can exist without it. Welcome to the world of artificial intelligence, right, in the 16th century. But we began to build a world where, not like Thomas or Bonaventure, the world became stripped of the sacred, stripped of the good, stripped of any divine meaning. It became a world of extended stuff. And so you can do with it what you want, right? You can chop it up, splice it up, build on it, throw it out, it doesn't matter. The only really important thing is the spiritual life, the soul. And we began to envelop a thinking of dualism, body and soul, which is a thinking that still abounds. People still ask, what happens when I die to my body? Well, okay, your soul's going to heaven, your body's going to earth. Okay, let's move on to Newton, because it becomes really tricky. Newton built on Descartes, right? It's a world of stuff. But Newton, again, a great mathematician, began to see how this stuff was organized lawfully. So Newton's world is this kind of an overseeing God who sees a world of orderly stuff, law and order, the world as a machine. And we began to operate like this. I often tell people, I take the common example of church on Sunday. Wherever you go to church, where I go to church, everyone sits in the same pew. That's Newton's world. We're sort of like mechanically wired this way. So I came into church one Sunday and I was a little bit late, and I thought, there's someone in my pew. Now, no one ever said, this is Ilia's pew, but we think like this, and therefore, when that happens, our whole being is sort of upturned. We can't even go to Mass anymore, because now we have to go look for a seat, and it's not the same seat, right? We know in religious life, the same thing. Keep the rule will keep you. Follow the law, and you'll be okay. It doesn't matter what you do, just follow the law. And so we began to, I think, build a world like this, a world according to Newtonian principles. And in some ways, I think this is why our systems, across the board are not working anymore, because this paradigm is, in a sense, giving way to something new. Barbara Taylor Brown says, we started operating our churches like Newton's world. She says, walk into many churches and you'll hear God described as a being who behaves almost as predictably as Newton's universe. Say you believe in God, you'll be saved. Sin against God, you'll be condemned. Say you're sorry, you'll be blessed. Obey the law, you'll be blessed. Sorry, you're forgiven. So people always ask, I prayed, why do bad things happen to me? Right? Newton's God has failed me. Here's what I think has happened in our own day. Our cosmology no longer fits with our theology, and we are no longer the center of this wonderful cosmos. And I think we have been displaced and we have become lost in space. And here we are, falling off the earth. Théo Desjardins, who is, in a sense, a guiding figure, a major guiding figure for my own work, a wonderful Jesuit paleontologist, very insightful, I would say a mystic in his own right, noted that the artificial separation between humans and cosmos is at the root of our contemporary moral confusion. We don't know how to act anymore because we no longer know how to read the stars.